Good afternoon, guys. What's going on? It is the Earthmaster here with an update video on this windy, cold, and rainy. It is Wednesday, December 12th or December 15th, 2015, about 1 p.m. California time. And latest quake, a 2.6 earthquake up in the Alaska region. Kind of a subduction zone earthquake, it looks like. Actually, 2.6 is way up here. We have been seeing a little bit of deeper movement into southern Alaska along the subduction zone there with the 3.0 and the 2.8. Let's go ahead and check out activity around the globe here on the latest map. Actually, that's the solar map here. We can check that out real quick. Sunspot activity really ramping up over the last day or so. It's amazing how fast these sunspots can pop up out of nowhere. We're getting a train of significant size sunspots. Some of these looking pretty it got a good potential for creating some good solar flares too. We'll see in the next coming days, but these are facing us and will be directly Earth faced once it hits the center of the disk here, or at least this image. 2906 currently the most potential one far as the Earth facing side of the sun goes. This one's kind of directly aimed at us. But look at this trail back over here. There's a pretty significant amount of sunspots there, specifically on the southern half of the sun. I'm kind of impressed with it. In fact, C flare potential has gone up to 85%. 85% chance of C flare from at least one of these sunspots. M flare has gone up as well, including an X flare potential with a 5% chance of that. I expect that to ramp up as well as we see significant movement there on the sun taking place. Let's see, I think we read this last night. Fairly large sunspot regions are currently located in the southeast quadrant, including a couple of these here. The largest of these was at 8.1. Okay, everything's looking pretty significant and lined up perfectly for some possible Earth-directed flares in the coming days, so we will keep an eye on that pretty closely. The 3-day, right now, the 3-day geomagnetic forecast, pending we don't get any massive solar flares, looks pretty minimal over the next couple days or so. Looking at earthquake activity, let's go ahead and jump into that real quick here. Alaska, what's going on up there in Alaska? Some movement along the subduction zones. Subduction zone, I should say, along the Aleutian Trench and inland, the Pacific North American plate boundaries. Seen a pretty deep earthquake here, 3.0 at 108 kilometers. That's a pretty significant deep earthquake there in that region. And some further deep earthquake activity to the south. Looking at the all magnitudes here, I want to bring this up as well. Shows microquake activity scattered about the Alaska region. There is that earthquake that just struck on the globe, a 2.6 at 14.2 kilometers into the mountain ranges there, way up in the beautiful state of Alaska. Some movement along the Aleutian Trench as well, including some activity around Davidoff, it looks like. 4.3. This one's pretty deep here. I don't know if that's associated with the volcano in that region or not. It kind of looks like it's out of the area, but deep, 128 kilometers. I don't believe that's volcanic related within the Aleutian Trench area. It's pretty deep. The trenches over here, northward, pretty quiet. We are seeing a swarm of movement, though, along the just south of the Japan Trench region, down here into the Uzu Trench. Hopefully I pronounced that correctly. A little swarm of activity kicking up, quite a few fours, upper fours kicking up as well. And looking like some deeper movement here, at least one of them, a 4.6 at 36.7 kilometers into the subduction zone. So kind of watching this area pretty closely here. We've seen a little swarm there, need to pay attention in that region. Areas to the west here around Taiwan and the Philippines, just a couple scattered earthquakes within that vicinity. And also the Indonesia area, seeing a little swarm of movement following that 7.3 earthquake in this region a couple days ago. Looks like some upper fours kicking off there for aftershock sequences within the Flores Sea area. Areas to the west here, up through Japan, India, and the Middle East, all look fairly quiet. A little earthquake up here around the Tajikistan region, and also Iran seeing a 5.0. We did see a little bit of earthquake activity ramping up south of Yemen with a, let's see what this one is here, a 4.7. kind of within that neat little fracture zone there. That's pretty interesting there. Up here to the north, around the Mediterranean Sea, a couple smaller earthquakes, 4.5 and a 4.2 within that region there. The Atlantic looks pretty quiet. North Atlantic, South Atlantic, a little bit of uptick in movement along the South Sandwich Islands area with a swarm of activity into the Trench region, down dip here into the subduction zone. A couple upper forests kicking off here with a return of renewed activity up here along the North American plate, including some activity off the coast of Oregon and the Gulf of California. South America, real quick, some activity kicking up around the Chile-Argentina border with a 232 kilometer deep 4.2, pretty deep into this region here. A couple other shallow or smaller quakes south of there along the Peru-Chile Trench. Looks like we have a little bit of movement along the New Madrid zone here, just outside of the New Madrid area. A 2.2 kicking off. Looks like, I'm not for sure on the depth of that. I don't know if this thing's been reviewed or not. It has been reviewed, and it looks like the depth remains even across the board with a 0 kilometer depth surface quake there in the Arkansas area. Also some activity ramping up once again in the Kansas area. Another 4-pointer kicking up here around the Salina area. Not a whole lot of fracking operations up here. I did check this earlier. See what we got here. There is some fault systems here. I remember covering that. Let's see if these guys are going to show it or not on this map. Yeah, I covered a little fault system up here, a little story documentation on it a few months back on a specific fault that runs through there. So I don't believe that this is all any fracking operated or fracking activities here within the region. See where that 4-pointer is. That's going to be this earthquake right here, 4-pointer. And looking at this map, I just don't see a whole lot of maybe a couple out here, looks like. But overall, most of this land out here looks like farmland and whatnot. So either way, this area has been picking up for a little while. Over the last week, this area has seen a pretty good swarm of movement, including I think we had thought we had a little bit larger 4.0 up here. So we may have to go back 30 days, 2.5 and above in this region. Yeah, there it is, 4.3. So it's been over a week ago since that 4.3 struck in that same region there as that 4.0 today. So just kind of watching that region pretty closely. This area gets swarms. It comes and it goes, similar to stuff in Oklahoma, but I think in this situation it's a little bit different than the fracking and pumping operations that we see down there from crustal weak spots creating those earthquakes, because we're not seeing a whole lot here throughout the Oklahoma and Texas area today, just mainly focused up here to the north, Kansas and the New Madrid zone. Gulf of California did see some further activity with a 4.8 kicking up. Subsequently, we've seen movement up here in the north with a 4.4 off the coast of Oregon along the Blanco fracture zone. This earthquake here, a little bit, I think this is a little bit further north than the cluster of activity we've seen over the last week or so along the Blanco fracture zone. So a little bit further northward migration. Could see some further swarming here if we continue to see activity ramping up along the west coast like it is today. Some activity also around the Ridgecrest region kicking up here, a little bit more active than it has been the last couple days. Obvious sign of increase in activity along the entire North American plate here along the west coast. Off the Garlock fault structure, a little 2.0, pretty shallow earthquake here to the east. Haven't seen a whole lot of movement here in this region. A little bit of activity in a linear fashion also to the north of the Garlock fault structure. Coincidence? Possibly. We'll have to keep an eye on this area as well around Southern California. San Jacinto fault area, all quiet. Only a couple small microquakes around the region. Nothing big really to chat about here in this area. A couple microquakes along the Anaheim, Orange area, Garden Grove, down there in the concrete jungles. Northward along the San Andreas fault here, the creeping section, seen some activity as well. Nothing significant, just a small little sequence of earthquakes along this segment of the San Andreas Fault. Not a whole lot of movement up north either, folks, around the Antelope Valley area. A little earthquake out here around, ooh, look at that. That's a, what do we got here? A 1.1. I know what's over here. What do we got there? What is that, Mount Konocti? Let's see here, Clear Lake. That would be up over here. Mount Konocti sits here. But that's well to the west. Of course, this area underneath here is still very active when it comes to heat and whatnot. Of course, a lot of geothermal energy plant operations here within this vicinity of the geysers. So it tells me right there, of course, activity is still pretty active underneath the surface here. But this earthquake kind of off the Clear Lake area, north of Lakeport, 1.1 at 2.9 kilometers. Just haven't seen a whole lot of movement here around the Clear Lake area. Let's see what else we got here. Northward, so we've got some much needed snow in the mountains coming today and over the next couple weeks. So I'm not going to see the sun for quite a while, and I'm okay with that. 2.2 at 12.4 kilometers up here north of Lassen Peak. Mount Lassen sits here about 5 miles or so to the south. Of course, this whole area, volcanic, a lot of volcanic activity here. You can't really, well, sometimes you can see it here on the map. But I took a flight over here a couple years ago, and I was surprised at all the volcanic domes throughout this region. Pretty impressive from the air. There's the earthquake off the coast of Oregon. Some activity ramping up through Oregon and Washington as well. Intermountain West region seeing a renewed movement of earthquake activity. Northern Nevada had a 3.1 near Paradise Valley. 8.7 kilometers for the depth of that earthquake. And some activity kind of working its way around the Yellowstone and Montana area. This area here has seen a pretty good amount of earthquake activity over the last week, even in the last 30 days or so. Most of it microquake activity, but there is definitely a swarm and a pattern to it, if you will. Look at this map here. You can see it kind of right up against all these mountain ranges here. And that's, well, what creates the mountains, right? Purely tectonic pressure and uplift and subduction and all sorts of stuff, right? When it comes to the plate dynamics here and creating mountains. Kind of looks like they're right up against the mountain ranges here all along this region. And that's only the last 30 days. Look at Oklahoma. Woo! It's a lot of fracking operation earthquakes out there for sure. We could go through all of them, and probably about 90% of them would be fracking operational causes. Over here around Quinton, that's highly, I believe this is fault systems up here. There's some mountain ranges that have formed here over time down to the south and working their way over to the New Madrid area. So I believe this is fault related earthquake activity. But in this region here, all over Oklahoma City, northward, Enid, and east of Woodward, all fracking earthquake activity. Let's see, what do we got here for Yellowstone real quick. Not a whole lot going on right now. Some wind events. It looks like it's coming into some of the stations there. I don't see any activity really to chat about. Some activity showing up around the Montana region in the seismographs, but overall local earthquake activity looks like maybe one down here right there. That's very localized. You can tell the spike on the seismograph there. It's not a flat type of signature, but a very distinct line indicating a localized earthquake, and that earthquake as well showing up on where'd we go? Hold on a second here. That was the other days. Showing up on Little West Thumb, Old Faithful, this area right here, picking up that earthquake. But this one here, Pitchstone Plateau, in a southern end of the Yellowstone caldera right here on the black line. Tremor activity was pretty quiet last night, folks. Not a whole lot going on. Like I say, the big story right now, watching the solar weather activity ramp up here with sea flare threat very heightened. And I'm kind of curious to see how these sunspots here will develop in the coming days. I mean, they're almost back to back. When you get these close ones like that, could get rather eye candy-ish, I guess you could say. I love sunspot activity, so it's eye candy to me. When it comes to space weather, we'll keep that keep that on the topic here on the updates over the course of the coming days here. So pretty active, folks. I like to see that. We will be back a little bit later. Enjoy the day. I got a lot of rain coming in here to California, so I'm going to sit back here and enjoy it. We'll chat to you guys a little bit later. Peace out, everyone.